Okay, so as we go along in life, the ability to tolerate extremes declines. So you think about it, stress, lifting heavy, pushing yourself to the limit, that's going to decline. Okay, but here's the deal. What people don't think about is stuff you take for granted will also decline. So if you can't sprint now, you're not gonna be able to walk sooner or later. So somebody that can sprint now is going to be able to walk a lot longer. So how you adapt to life and how you age and all that, a lot of that is gonna be your ability to tolerate extremes. In the wild, it's kind of crazy, you know, animals, they have instincts to survive, but it's kind of pathetic and sad when you go to a zoo and you see how the animals act. They act dormant. They're totally different. So I think, you know, that's how a lot of people act too, is you kind of get dormant in your way of doing things. You no longer do things that are hard. You no longer do things that are a challenge yourself. In the wild, an animal has to go from nothing to all out in the blink of the eye. And you know, you think a lot of people now, if they're doing something pretty simple, like just, you know, machines at 50%, they want a foam roll for 3 hours. That's not how it would be in the wild. And I get it, we're not wild animals, but you also don't have to be dormant either. Over the years, my training has changed, okay? So there is nothing wrong. I think it's great when you're young to be a specialist, go all out, do everything you can do to be the best at what you can do. I love it. You know, but as you know, if you're not competing anymore, I think there becomes a time, instead of like, my personal philosophy is, instead of becoming a specialist, I want to be a high level generalist. So I'm not ready to run the Olympics for track, you know. I get that I'm not, you know, competing at this contest or whatever, but I want to be pretty high level at a bunch of different things. It's that 50 cube philosophy. I want to move like I'm 50 pounds lighter and you have the movement capacity, speed, conditioning of somebody 50 pounds lighter, but have the strength and power of somebody 50 pounds heavier. So it's like, when you talk about cubed, what's that mean? It becomes exponential. It doesn't become just, hey, you know what, like a little better here. Like, no, when you do all these things pretty well, it really pays off to what you're gonna encounter in the real world. Like, where I'm at my life right now, I'd love to train 2 to 3 times a day. I can't. If I can put in about 50%, you know, of the work like an elite athlete would do in these different areas, and get about 90% of the result. So that's where what I'm after, is kind of you know, that minimal effective dose to really maximize results without quite going to that competitive level. So we're talking about this sprint resistant training. The idea is the training economy, the most bang for your buck. So we're not trying to like do a thing of like, okay, if we plot this thing, we're gonna go 30% of the hypotenuse of the force velocity curve. It's like, we just need to get out here, get some good work in right now. And we're gonna go into a little bit later of the whole resistant philosophy, how it's gonna be safer and more effective. So if you're gonna get into this type of training, you can't come out here and sprint all out day one, because you think about how do you get faster. You can increase your stride frequency, you can improve running technique and increase stride length. Mostly people that are strong are gonna have, how do you increase your stride length, get stronger, push off harder. So if that's you, that's how you know you can get hurt if you're not used to that type of training. So with the resistance training, which we'll cover a little more in-depthly here, that's gonna, you know, you're not gonna be quite you're not have quite as fast of a turnover. It won't be quite as long of a stride length, keeping you safer in the process. So if you're in the weight room now, to bridge the gap to actually get out here to sprint, what do we do? That's where you got like kind of your movement type of strongman training, like farmer's walks, you know, backward sled drags, things where you're actually moving instead of staying stationary. We'll kind of bridge that gap to eventually get to sprint resistant training. And then you really don't need to get to a whole lot of, you know, body weight sprint training on flat ground unless you're actually going to compete in something that does that. Because, you know, it's all about, we want to minimize the risk and get the most out of it. Risk to benefit ratio, I've talked about it a million times, and 1,000,001 today to get it home. So you see, a lot of what I'm doing today when we do this is a walking start, because I figure like if I'm actually going to sprint in real life, since I'm not doing a track meet or anything, I'm probably gonna be kind of standing there or walking and just have to take off into it. Obviously that gets a little more complicated when we get into the sled, and that won't work with like a weighted vest or whatever. That's the idea. So why is he not in the starting stance? Because generally in real life, what's gonna happen, I'll be walking, standing, have to get into it. So when I rest, in between, just to keep a little bit active, I'll walk real slow, kind of keep active recovery, not just standing there doing nothing, and then come back, do it again. The key here also with warming up when you actually get in the sprints is starting shorter, extending out. Most injuries are gonna happen beyond 20 yards. That's where you really get going. The stride really lengthens. So they're gonna happen beyond there. So you're much safer at 20 yards and in. We'll focus on getting an explosive start, then start to drag it out a little bit. So what we're talking about here, if you were to use one type of model of periodization, I would say with sprints, you'd actually go with the reverse linear. So instead of starting really high volume and really long, going down, you do the opposite. You would go to that shorter, say you start at 10 yards to 12 to 15, so on. You'd want to actually lengthen it out. If you think about that, why? Because your tissues are not getting that same demand if you're not going full speed. So I'd rather go shorter, max speed, max effort, get the same imposed physiological demands and extend it out versus going long and slow and you're never quite ready when you get full speed. This is something I first heard about this concept a long time ago from Ian King. I know that upon further reading, some of the Russian books had it in it. The East Germans used it for their, sprint program. So, Charlie Francis talks about it in his book. So it actually has the backing of a lot of people, but if you think about it, it just makes sense. How are you gonna get, if you're going 150 yards, at taking 20 seconds, then you wanna get to like a 640 or something. That's not gonna make sense because you never actually got that speed, those physiological demands, that kind of thing. You are an adaptive organism, but you only adapt to stress if you apply stress, whether it's physical, mental, spiritual, or in between. I would highly recommend a book called Gang Fit by the Anaerobic or Guru Anaerobic. Great book, and we touch on these concepts more than I'm going to today. You want to do hard things in life. You have to train hard. So you have to be smart as you go, but you can't only, if you're going over, you got the fitness center over there, they got, lame ass kind of equipment, machines, elliptical, all that shit. It's okay, better than nothing. But if you want to, be gas station ready, you're gonna have to do better than nothing. You're gonna have to expose yourself to hard stuff. It's not gonna kill you once in a while. If it's cold to walk outside without a coat, that kind of stuff. Think about it now. If you are putting in this work now, to retain a quality takes a lot less volume than to maintain a quality. You know what I'm saying? So if you bench press 400 pounds, to stay strong, you don't have to do as much work as you did to get there. That's an important thing to remember, okay? Think about any kind of program success. The number one factor to success in that program, it's not, obviously assuming it's coherent, is gonna be your adherence to that program, okay? Adherence comes from keeping the training realistic and fun, you know what I mean? So you have to adhere, but you have to adhere to what actually your lifestyle fits. If you're working 80 hours a week, you got 3 kids, all that kind of stuff, you can't probably train twice a day. You'd be better off to schedule 3 to 4 times a week and make sure you're, totally consistent with what you're doing. You got to think about results. Results are not because of one, Instagram highlight type of workout. Results are statistical long-term trend. If you ever take statistics, there is a thing called trend. If you're on that trend for a period of time, you get good results, okay? So we were talking about today, we did the sprints with a weighted vest, okay? So that's a lot of stuff, I also use with tactical athletes, like your cops, military, firefighters, jobs of that nature. You can't forget our beloved brothers in bouncing and private security as well. Okay, so what you want to do, a lot of those jobs are going to require you to perform tasks under external load, okay? So I've done like a tactical training certification course, and I did a lot of surveys. Besides people I actually work with, I sent out hundreds of people. So we found out about 65% of the people that are law enforcement officers use greater than 20 pounds of gear on at one time, okay? SWAT on average was higher than 60 pounds, okay? And infantry in the military, they can be up to 140 pounds. Afghanistan, some of them are averaging 99 pounds, so basically 100 pounds of gear. So you have to be able to perform under load. The effects of like load carriage for these tactical athletes are going to be documented by science, and of course, just talk to one, but reduce situational awareness, okay? Because you get tired. Reduce power production, speed, agility, coordination. Increase it when you have that increased fatigue, your reaction times are going to be slower, your logical reasoning, your memory, all that stuff's going to be, take a hit. You have reductions, you have more muscle fatigue, increased, forward head posture if you're not careful with that. Okay, changes in your gait, just how you walk, reduced range of motion in your pelvis, hips, things like that. Increased effective local motion, increased body temperature, just increased force in the body. So if you're gonna, you have to be able, so let's just say, if you're too weak to perform like that, you could be somebody that could hey, you know what? I run a 4.5 but I'm 110 pounds. You put 60 pounds of SWAT gear on them, takes 11 seconds, in essence, you've made yourself as useless as tits on a bullfrog, for lack of syntax, okay? So to optimize load carriage for these athletes, what we do is we want to have a favorable muscle mass, low body fat percentage, high amount of muscle mass, good strength base, good aerobic base, okay? Unfavorable to those conditions will be, weak with a high percentage of body fat and carrying unnecessary weight. An additional 10 kilograms, I was doing the workout today, it's 22 pounds, 25-pound vest, is a lot of additional, so specificity is huge, and just training this way for these kind of guys, just even once a week can make a huge difference. Sprint resistant training, so obviously I'm not a track runner, and most of the people I work with that are tactical athletes and stuff are not track runners either. So if you say, hey, you know what, you add this much resistance is gonna screw up your cadence slightly or whatever, I would way rather slightly screw up my cadence than get an injury, because you know what? If I'm injured, I'm no longer physically effective, so that's not gonna cut the mustard for what I need to do. So to make this as safe as possible, that's the number one reason why I do sprints with resistance. It's a hill, it's sand, it's a weighted vest, it's a sled. It's because of the built-in safety mechanism. I'm simply not gonna have as fast of a turnover, and my stride's not gonna be quite as long. That's gonna be a lot safer on my hamstrings, which, tearing a hamstring is the number one. Most of my sprints, I went quite a bit further today, but generally are 20 yards or less, because once you start getting beyond 20 yards and really opening up, that's when you start to have problems, that's when you start to have injury, okay? So then, furthermore, for just anybody, the resistance sprints kind of bridge the gap. We talked before about how getting to this point from lifting could be like strongman, things like that. But bridging the gap, from any of those strength-based weight room strongman to the field of play, whether it's, the back of a bar room running from the cops, or, playing touch football in the church league, or chasing down the guy outside the liquor store to steal your old lady's purse. Bridging that gap is gonna happen with resisted. Oh shit, geese incoming! Never mind, okay. Okay, so seriously. Feces! Okay, so bottom line is, adding resistance is going to bridge the gap from the weight room to be able to sprint as fast as possible on flat land, okay? The body angle when you use resistance is very similar to the acceleration phase of sprinting. So you want to build that acceleration phase. It's very favorable body angle with this resistance, okay? So then that makes it a little bit safer too. It's gonna build mental toughness, physical resilience. Not only are you sprinting, moving fast, keeping yourself wild, you're no longer tame in that zoo, you're doing it resistance, you're getting some strength-based, conditioning, your mind and body. That's huge with what we're doing. And I think, a lot of people don't talk about, it just feels good. When I can walk out right here and I just can take off in a sprint, it feels good psychologically. After the sprint work, it'll feel good. It's when I walk into a sprint, maybe I look like a drunken chicken with my head cut off, but I feel like I'm just gliding. It just feels so good. It's a feeling you don't get in the weight room. I mean, I love the weight room feelings, but this is something totally different. Functionality, obviously at the end of the day, the reason I'm training is for functionality. What's functionality mean? Functional training is not I'm sure if you go to this little strip mall right here, I see there's a gym there. I'm sure it's some, huge circle jerk, just nonsense crap, right? This functionality is how well does this training transfer? It's be tough to have a better transfer of training than sprints, okay? So, like I said, the difference, obviously we've already talked about the sand and the hills, but what's one of the things that's cool about the sled is probably my favorite one, besides the hills, is you think about where is the resistance coming from. The resistance coming is the weight is behind you, so it's actually you're getting horizontal resistance, not just vertical resistance like you would with a squat or something. You think about what, the horizontal resistance, overcoming that is huge to actually get faster. There's obviously a combination of vertical and horizontal, but the horizontal is extremely important, and I don't think it gets enough, I guess kind of press time, if you will. No, in all seriousness, there's something special that feels good with a sprint. When you're finally warmed up, when I got to the sleds, it's like I can feel myself gliding. It's such a good feeling to know that if I was here with one of my kids, like just messing around, and my daughter's playing or something, some hobo tried to grab something, he's not gonna get away. I'm gonna run after him, and he doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell. That is empowering and good to know that from that standpoint. And you think about gas station ready. Gas station ready doesn't always mean like, it's like Mike Tyson slugfest. What if there's a gas station ready about survival? So if there's like, 8 people with switchblades and I'm unarmed, the smartest thing to do would be to sprint away. And guess what? They're not gonna catch me. That's empowering too. But beyond that kind of safety, I'm talking about, I keep talking about functionality, all that stuff, it just feels good to do it. It's like, one time we had this guy in high school, he came to speak to our high school football team. He was an older guy that had played at the school and played at USC and in the pros. And he said, I remember the last thing he said is like, I'd give back 15 years of my life if I could just run down the field one more time, okay? That might be a little extreme, but like, it's sort of like crazy in a way, but like once something feels that good, like you think about all the preparation you put in, if you're going even a pretty far sprint here, it's like 6-7 seconds. But all the preparation that goes into that for that 6 or 7 seconds is like, it's like you got to love and enjoy the process, but that 6 or 7 seconds is like, if you had an experience you couldn't run, I'd be worth thousands of dollars just to feel it once.